All right, so in this video I want to talk a little bit about some of the most important and fundamental aspects of actually setting up a lifestyle that supports health and is not just going to continually undermine and degrade any other things that we might be trying to do to move ourselves in more of a positive direction. These are really important to mention and to, more importantly, dial in and implement into our lives, because the vast majority of the time what I see in dealing with people is that they don't have these things dialed in. They don't really have any understanding of them, and they're not really yet aware of the importance that they have and the negative impact that not having them is having on them, if that makes sense. And if you stretch this out over a long enough period of time, eventually people are going to be getting into more and more extreme gimmicks and compensation patterns, and basically they're just going to probably keep yo-yoing from one extreme to the other and not actually understanding any type of basic, grounded, balanced, even way of existing. Because on a wider scale, unfortunately, a lot of what is normal for people is really unhealthy. And then if that's stretched out over a long enough period of time, then you really don't even know what health or balance or grounded or centered even means. And then if you look out in the world, quite often the vast majority of the examples of these things are quite distorted and are not really even representations of what they should be. It's kind of like fast food. In many ways, it's like a representation of kind of what food can or should be, but actually lacks any of the sustenance and the real quality to have it actually be the thing that it's meant to be. So all that aside, it comes down to how we eat, how we move, how we breathe, how we relate with other people, and understanding the quality of these things and the underlying rhythms to them. A great example is obviously our circadian rhythm, and a lot of people just kind of I'll talk to people that want health advice, and then they tell me about their sleep patterns, and it's like, oh, well, I'm usually up till 2 or 3, and then I wake up at 10, or I like to stay up really late. I don't really have any type of rhythm there. But for some reason, I just feel anxiety during the day, and I can't focus, and I get tired, and I don't know, I just don't feel the best throughout the day. And I'm like, well, I can think of one pretty blatant idea of why you don't feel grounded and why you have these insane ups and downs is because you're not actually doing anything to support your body's ability to maintain those things, meaning you're doing the opposite. You're not even honoring any type of circadian rhythm, which is not giving you any type of foundation. Then you take that, combine it with, oh, well, what's your diet like? Oh, well, I don't know. I don't really get that hungry. I don't really eat that much. I just don't think I need that much food. I just don't have a strong appetite, or if I eat, I do feel tired afterwards. So I don't know. I just kind of like maybe have something later in the day, or I don't know. It's like, okay. Or the other extreme is people become militant and OCD. Okay, I'll wake up at exactly 9 a.m. and then I eat exactly 17 almonds, but I peel each of them, and then I eat 4 slices of oranges, and I take a bulletproof coffee enema, and I snort ibogaine, and then they go down this other extreme, insane rabbit hole. When in reality, it's just like, go to bed at normal times, wake up, eat just regular food at a normal time. Don't eat so much to where you feel stuffed and lethargic, but don't eat so little that you don't feel balanced. So eat enough that you feel balanced and satisfied to last you till lunch, so you can actually focus on what you should be doing with your life, which is living it, not being obsessed over minute details of what you eat and don't eat and this and that, and spending hours a day online reading about the new toxic thing you have to avoid and the new miracle cure, and all this just mental tension and ridiculousness. Okay, so you have the way you eat, the way you sleep, and actually getting rhythms there, and actually starting to pay attention to how those rhythms feel, and just having awareness and being able to regulate these basic life functions for yourself as an adult. And it sounds really stupid and obvious, and it is. And for a lot of people, it's not a big deal, but for a lot of people, it is a big deal, because we don't actually learn any real life skills in school. And maybe you're lucky and you had a good upbringing or solid mentors, or you just never had any events in your life that threw you off center to begin with. So great. If so, I'm not sure why you're watching the video or why you're on YouTube at the moment, but anywho, so the way you eat, the way you sleep, and then obviously your relationships. And this is another major thing where I'll talk to people where, okay, their sleep is chaotic, their diet is all over the place. And then next, their relationships, the way they feel about people is typically a lot of resentment, bitterness, anger, frustration. People suck, people are dumb, people are fill in the blank, or they go into wide-scale, far-fetched conspiracy theories and these abstract notions and absurd worldviews and explaining the world through, I don't know, crystals and angel cards and channeled beings and extreme conspiracy theory. Like all this grandiose stuff, which is just also indicating not centered, not balanced, not grounded, not even, not stable, blood deficient, chi deficient, etc. So it's just the more you stack these layers of disease is the more sort of imbalance that you feel. Meaning like your diet is your rhythms for eating are way off. Okay. Your way of relating to yourself and the world and your relationships are full of negative emotions. Okay. You don't really sleep very well or regularly. Okay. And then you want like a miracle pill to just fix everything. It's like, okay, well, herbs and supplements and modalities help, yes, but they're only going to take you so far if these things are not in place. And then obviously getting to exercise and just actually moving your body on a regular basis. Again, people tend to go to extremes. They either do nothing and they're completely lethargic. I'm like, well, I thought about doing this exercise and then I read about it, but then I read this other thing that said actually that one thing was not the best, but then I read the other one which said this thing was actually the best, but only under these circumstances, but then I read this other thing, and then I listened to this podcast, and then I saw this course online, and then I saw Joe Rogan, and then I did this, and I did that. It's like, all right, well, you're 8 hours into researching when in any point in that 8 hours, you could have just gone for a 30 to 60 minute walk. You could have driven to anywhere around you and gone for a hike, and case closed, problem solved, job done. But instead, you're spinning in circles over nothing, over minutia. When in reality, you could have just done a really simple thing, accomplished your task, and been done. But okay. And I don't say all these things to make fun of people. I just say it because these are the extremes that people are likely to fall into, people are falling into. So if you understand the traps, you understand the extremes, you can have awareness of that and then potentially not fall into them, or if you do fall into them, not stay into them as long. So it is actually beneficial to understand these things. So yeah, these are just basic fundamental things that I think quite often are overlooked, or if they are approached, they're generally approached in the wrong way, where, for example, you have this absurd amount of mental tension and anxiety from this imbalanced lifestyle, and then you think the way to solve that imbalance and that anxiety is by allowing that anxiety to create more anxiety by going down even more and more absurd, extremely tense rabbit holes, which what I mean by tense and mental tension, all these things, is the amount of strain and struggle and effort that it takes to uphold these types of ideas and beliefs and philosophies and paradigms and extreme gimmicks and modalities is very tense. Like, for example, rather than just do the things that I've talked about in a simple, clear, concise, and basic manner, people would rather do crazy injections, go on crazy fasts, go on extreme diets, whether there's pure carnivore or pure vegan, or do ice baths, and they just can go to these crazy extremes rather than just acknowledging basic, simple things, such as of what I'm talking about. Which the other problem is that what I'm talking about is so basic that it will probably go over some people's heads because they want, like, all right, you need to take 0.78 milligrams of ketamine and inject it through your third toenail while chanting Om, while looking at the sun at exactly 9:26 in the morning, facing this degree, but standing on one leg. But then you also can only get syringes from this one website because all the other websites are toxic, and this is based on my 20 years and my $500,000 of personal research that I've spent, and I have put a lot of energy and effort to creating this fake public persona and maintaining this fake idea online, but in actuality, I'm completely falling apart as a person. But please buy my course, come to my workshop. It's only $25,000 a person. We only have 700 tickets left. Like, it just becomes this whole insane world. When in actuality, it comes back to, like, are you at all content or happy in your relationships? Can you actually sleep and go to bed, like wake up on a regular rhythm? Can you actually just cook a regular meal for yourself? And the other thing is that quite oftentimes why people feel better when they go to these insane extremes is because it's like, if you're so mentally and emotionally wound up that any amount of food that you put in your body is registered as a foreign invader, meaning an immune response, an inflammatory response, and then you don't eat and you feel better, that doesn't mean not eating is like the cure. It just means that you're so wound up and your gut is so imbalanced that you just removed the one of the stressors, so it felt better. It's like, man, I realized if I stopped putting my hand on the hot stove, that my hand wouldn't get burnt anymore. So the key is to just not put my hand on the stove. So I'm just not ever going to use stoves anymore. I'm going to be a raw foodist. It's like, well, no, you can use stoves. Stoves are very beneficial, and cooking your food is great. You should just have the common sense and the wherewithal to be an adult and say, I'm not going to put my hand on the hot stove, because if I do, it's going to get burnt. Not that stoves are bad or cooking is dumb, but just that I'm not going to do this thing, and otherwise it's going to be great. But this is sometimes the level of logic and thought that people have. So hence they go to extremes. So anyways, hopefully this 12 minutes of ranting has driven home repeatedly the importance of these things. And I only say that because, you know, I made all those mistakes and I had all those imbalances, and then I'd be like, oh man, I don't understand why I feel so off all the time. And I'm like, oh, let me just do these things. And then after a while I was like, oh, all right, well, never mind. Things just go away. And also, based on lots of Q&As and talking to people and doing consultations, it's like, people are like, okay, well, I want to do this thing and I want to do a lot. I have this long list of mental anxieties. And I'm like, all right, well, what about these basic things? Oh, what do you mean? Oh, it's like, all right, well, let's just start there and then maybe work our way up. And then whatever you do from the other things, you'll get more from. So anyways, hopefully that helps, and I'll talk to you soon.